Okay, so let's start with you tell everybody about yourself, your background, and what it is that you do.
Okay, yeah. So I played D3 athletics at SUNY Brockport.
Mhm.
I was a volleyball player there, and I was basically not recruited at all. I came from a very small, like rural school in upstate New York, and we actually played volleyball in a different season than the rest of the country. So it was like very weird. We're still like winter season here for some reason, and everyone else is fall. And they like haven't changed it, and we've been trying to get them to change it forever. But anyway, so I played D3 athletics, and I like fell in love with the whole atmosphere that is like D3 athletics. And I went to a very athletic based school. I don't know if you're familiar with SUNY Brockport. It's
Yeah.
like very athletic. Like if you're not an athlete there, I actually don't know what you do because there's like that's like the whole thing. And so I loved it. And then afterwards, I graduated with my exercise science degree. I started doing strength and conditioning.
Mm.
And I like really realized I loved working with obviously the athlete population, but specifically like the end of high school, college athlete age.
Mm.
And so then I began coaching at a school close to me, SUNY Polytechnic. And I was the men's volleyball coach there actually, which was a little bit of a shift because I was like 23 when I got the job. And I was like coaching men's. Obviously, I didn't play men's volleyball, same sport, but different game for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and, I was coaching a lot of the guys were barely younger than me. So that was a change of pace for sure as well. It was a little bit of a culture shock. Um, and then I stayed there. I was coaching there for a while with them. And then I actually went to Hamilton College. I worked in the athletics department there as well, doing some like coordinating stuff for them. And then I went back to SUNY Poly. They called me and said they really needed a women's volleyball coach. They had a little bit of like staff realignment
Mm.
situation, and they
Mm.
could not fill the void for the men's or the women's volleyball coach. And this was August 17th, and the season started on August 18th.
Oh no.
So, yeah, so it was like phone interview, in-person interview, background screening, everything within 24 hours because they like desperately needed to fill this position. So I went there. So obviously all my time, I was there for 2 years and then I stepped away. Um, so, all that time was just there's such a balance in coaching between coaching and actually like making the athletes better and then the recruiting side of it. And obviously those like metrics are just so different on how you can be deemed as successful. Like to your athletes, you're successful if you're bringing out the best in them and if you're,
Right.
you know, supporting them in all their needs. But then to the college, you're successful if you're bringing in more kids and
Yeah.
if you're retaining your kids. And then, so since I've stepped away, and I stepped away for a multitude of reasons, some personal and some with the institution,
Mm.
I just realized I really like kind of helping kids through that process of finding their right fit in school.
Mm.
And it's such a salesy thing when you really think about it. And like some coaches, and like obviously being around it, like some coaches really sell programs on kids. And then like that's that kid's like 4 years. Like that's their future. Like you're shaping their future. And so I
Yeah.
started my social media with kind of like transparency and recruiting is what I try to go for.
Mm.
And we just talk about, the questions you need to be asking to make sure the fit is right for you and how you can pick up on subtle red flags or green flags within your college athletics recruiting process. And I've actually found to really enjoy it so much. Like I love helping kids in that aspect and like just helping them with the recruiting process overall. And then from there, I've done a couple other opportunities working with like a community of high school volleyball players based out of Texas that are looking to play any division, and just kind of helping them through the recruiting process. So I do like recruiting advising with them now. So just kind of dabbling in like helping with that process because I think it's so important and seeing coaches both at like my school that I was working at and then other schools like try to get kids in there is just so crazy to me how like some go about it in such a good way and like such a meaningful way and like they're successful with it their way and then some go about it in such a not good way in my opinion that it's
Yeah.
it's like crazy.
It's it's such an interesting position to be in because obviously you need kids, right? You need kids on the roster. But one of the things I found for myself when I coached for Division 1 women's hockey, and when we
Hmm.
were bringing kids in, like there are some positions that are easy to recruit for. You know, you get like a stud kid and you can come in and you can honestly say to them like you're gonna play. Like
Yeah.
that's what we're bringing you here to do. But so for me, I worked with goalies specifically, and there's only three spots on the team, right? And the first two will play. Sometimes
Yeah.
even just the first one, but the first two got a real shot. But that third one, you're facing an uphill battle, and
Right.
you're probably not on scholarship, and you're really kind of just there to be a great teammate, and like maybe you pull it out, maybe people get injured, you know, you're gonna get an education, but it's not even gonna really be paid for,
Right.
probably. And you know, you get a lot of kids in that zone who what I've found is they kind of realize this and then they have this decision of do I go D1 and say to myself, I was a Division 1 player, but I probably never played, or do I go D3
Right.
and I'm going to play a lot more because I
Yeah.
will
You'll
be
probably
a
be a
better,
stud.
I'll be a stud on the team.
Yeah.
But there seems to be, obviously, there's this stigma D3, D1, even though, you know, most people have no idea the politics and everything else that goes into where kids end up eventually. You know, I
Right.
remember when I was coming up, like I played on a hockey team that was supposed to be the top kids in New England after their freshman year of high school. And they were pumping our tire, like all of you are going D1, a couple of you probably be in the NHL, that sort of thing. One kid ended up making D1 and he lasted a year before he rotated to D3.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's such a hard thing to predict. So I think a good
Yeah.
place to start here is explaining the differences in recruiting and the differences between Division 1, Division 2, and Division 3. Because I don't think a lot of people really understand it, athletes included.
Yeah. Yeah. So really like D3 is just so much more, like you said, like they're not getting paid. So D1 and D2, there's always the money aspect of it. Where like specifically with volleyball right now, like you see it with the transfer portal now too. Like it's a really great player in the country who's at a really great program D1, there's a coaching change and now they're getting paid a ton of money to go play at a different school and like to transfer to a different school. And like the money behind it, especially now with, like I said, the transfer portal and the NIL deals is like crazy. I can't even like, I feel like the landscape, if you're not in it, people like probably have no idea what goes on behind the scenes, really.
Hmm.
And then there's like always that a lot of the bigger programs, so like Nebraska volleyball for one, like everyone knows Nebraska volleyball right now is like top of the country. And I constantly see on social media, like, why does this one certain girl even play there? She's rode the bench for 4 years. Like she could have gone somewhere else and played somewhere. But it's like those kids you're talking about, like those third goalies, like they want to play at a program like that, like the resources and the support they get. And then they also get to say that they were a D1 athlete. And for some people, that's everything they've ever dreamed of. And like if you come from one of those bigger areas where that's being fed to you is like you're gonna go D1, you're gonna go D1, like it's D1 or bust, then that can really be like make it or break it for them. Like even if they were the star on a D3 team, they're probably not gonna feel the same satisfaction as they do
Mhm.
playing on one of the best teams in the country, D1.
Absolutely.
Um, and then D3, like D2, I don't even know. D2 is a wild world to me, honestly. Like, I don't know. There are so many like really great D2 programs, but then there's so many D2 programs that are beat by D3 programs every year. And you're like, what's going on? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
So, and like volleyball specifically, obviously, I just know the volleyball landscape better than other
Mhm.
sports. I don't even know what the heck goes on with D2. Like, obviously, there's money involved, but I don't even know. Because, like I said, it's crazy. And I feel like a lot of D2 schools too are like very like niche schools. Like the
Yeah.
ones I know of are like they either have like a crazy program that's like really hard to get into and it's like really sought after and they're like smaller, but like if you do that program, you're like set up academically for like a really great like whatever it is. Like the one school kind of in my area does like they have like a PA program where you can go there for like a shorter amount of time to become a PA and like that's
Mm.
amazing, obviously.
Mhm.
Cool. And then like the other ones are like really religious based. So like I don't even know. I don't touch D2. I don't touch it with a 10-foot pole because I actually have no idea. It's very confusing to me. But then D3 is like the opposite. Like it's very like you're playing to play. You're never getting money for it. You have to get into the school academically. It's a little bit more of like an honest, I feel like really straightforward way to go about it because really there's very few things coaches can do to
Mhm.
get kids in. And there are some things. There are special talents. There's, little pulls with admissions here and there, and there's little things behind the scenes, but like really most of it comes down to is the school the right fit for you? Can you academically get in? Can you afford it? And then can you balance your time between playing a sport for free and just for the love of the game and doing your academic program? And like I constantly get people in my DMs or in my comments being like, I would never go D3. Like, that's crazy. You might as well go anywhere else. Like, you might as well just go to a big school and just have the traditional college experience. But then I always go back and like I comment back and I'm like, would you tell a kid at MIT that? Because I played like our men's team played against MIT. So those kids are D3 athletes. They're getting an MIT education. They're playing the sport they love for another 4 years,
Mhm.
hopefully, that they wouldn't be able to do anywhere else. So are you going to tell a kid at MIT, don't go to MIT because it's D3? Like that's crazy to me. You'd rather
Yeah,
them go to like a bigger school. Like that's just nuts. And a
it
lot of
makes
the
some
D3
sense.
programs are like really high academics. Like all the NESCAC schools, like I worked at Hamilton, and like the ties, even like Hamilton hockey, crazy. The amount of success they have afterwards just in their job is like insane.
Yeah.
And like that's D3.
Yeah, kids think about it obviously like when you're growing up and you're thinking about like playing college sports. Like you're not thinking about like the career side and the academic side and all
Right.
that sort of thing. But what you need to be thinking about is that part of this is setting yourself up for the future. Even within sports like football and baseball and hockey that have like very well established professional leagues where you can very much make a living doing it.
Hmm.
You know, even in the number of kids that actually, even at like Alabama, just because you played on the team doesn't mean you're going to be in the NFL. There's
Right.
it's not a predictor. And so you really do have to think about what is my future? And like you said, these schools are just these very not, they're not big schools. They're small little private schools that have incredible institutional connections. The network you're going to
Hmm.
get off of it is phenomenal. You're going to be able to put on your resume that you were a student athlete, which goes a very long way when you're trying to find a job. It really does set you up for the future.
Yeah.
But getting a 17, 16-year-old kid who's processing oh, I'm not going to end up D1 like I'd always dreamed of, to kind of wrap their head around that is so hard to do.
Right. And then I get a lot of people too saying like, oh, I would never go D3. Well, some people are, 5'7" outside hitters for volleyball. You're never going D1 for that. Like there's also that like scientific background that I like obviously dabbled in with like exercise science where like some kids are just athletic and some kids just aren't.
Yeah.
And it's not that you're not athletic, but like size matters in certain sports. And like you probably know it with hockey too. Like that's a big thing. I know I coached one girl, she played for Colgate, and like she was always taught like she was undersized. She was undersized, undersized. And I know right now she did play for like the women's professional like Boston
Oh,
thing.
okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, Sydney,
Yeah.
she was really great. But she was always told she was undersized. And even her, like she was really talented and like she had a very talented family. I think her brother golfed D1 and he was like semi-professional as well. Um, they were always like, she was like, I don't know if I can even do D1 because she was like 5'6". Like she wasn't a big girl ever. And
Mhm.
like, I think that was a lot of her like college journey was like putting on some size, putting on some mass. And like, there's just certain things like, okay, you might tell a kid like, yeah, go D1, but if they don't fit and like football too, I've had a few kids like message me and they're like, I want to go D1. And I'm like, okay, like, what's the deal? What's your recruiting process so far? Like what's going on? Like what are your stats? And they're like, oh, I'm a 5'8". And I think he said like he was like a 5'8" linebacker, this one, 160 pounds. I'm like, bro, like we gotta be realistic. Like you're probably not gonna go D1. Like
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but those are like very real conversations we have. Like I know with
right,
goalies, so on the men's side, you know, a big part of goaltending is just the geometry of if you're bigger, you take up more
right,
net. And a 5'11" guy is considered a severely undersized goalie at the men's level. That
right.
is a enormous female goal. That's a 1% female goalie. There's not many girls that are 5'11" that are playing Division One. And I guarantee you every single school is looking. There are girls that I remember getting sent who were, I think there was one girl, she was 6 feet tall and she could barely skate. And we had that versus a girl who was like 5'7", who was just phenomenal
Yeah.
and very experienced, played at a high level. And they were like, what do you think about the cost of her being 6 feet? But like, can we teach her to skate? Like, can we like that sort of thing? And like, those are real conversations you have. And I
Yeah.
imagine it's the same across every sport of we need to win.
Right.
I think that's the big thing that kids aren't used to is like this is your coach's job. Like if they don't win, they're gonna get fired and they won't have money to feed their family. Like
Right. Yeah.
it's
And that's
not your
another thing too that like it's always like, oh, well, the coach just doesn't like me or the coach, whatever. And it's like I guarantee you 99% of the time the coach is trying to recruit better kids
yeah,
to play better kids in the game, to win more games. Like I
yeah,
guarantee it because like you said, this is their job. This is
yeah.
like
Well, it's like you
so
just it's
there's
like you
so
said
much.
with like there's the relationship as a coach you have with the administration who give you these KPIs that don't always have anything to do with winning and losing. It's, especially at D3 level, my understanding is like a lot of these programs are put in place because they bring more kids in, not just on the team, but additional applications for the university, you know,
Yeah.
and having a good team helps with that, obviously. But, those goals that get sent down from the school side aren't always aligned with the best interest of an individual player, you know,
Right.
and that when a coach says to you, like, yeah, we believe in you and we see you doing big things, they might be telling the truth. They might not be,
Right.
but like the thing to know is like, depending on how invested they are in you, like they may give you a year, and if they don't see anything, then you're done and you're kind of written off. And I've had so many conversations with kids that I feel like they're like, I feel like, it's a different coach from the coach I talked to during recruiting. Like, who
Yeah.
who is this person I'm playing for?
Yeah, and that's the part that like really kind of personally like ate away at me. And I
Mm,
feel like on the men's side, for me specifically, like where I was coaching, SUNY Poly is a very like techie engineering school. So when I was with the men's, I felt like selling the program was very easy because it was kids interested in like size wise and like talent wise, they're going D3. They want men's volleyball, which already gives them like a very limited number of schools to begin with.
mm,
And then if they want electrical engineering or computer science or, mechanical engineering to get that at like a state rate while playing your sport, like it was pretty much like us or nothing. It was very easy selling for the guys, and it was very guilt-free for me too, because at the end of the day, like
mm,
whether I played them or not, or whether they enjoyed the team or not, or like whether we won games or not, they were getting a engineering degree with like little to no debt coming out of it and still playing their sport. So like really it's a win-win everywhere. But then when you see like other programs and even like other, programs in that school, but then other programs, other schools where they're like trying to sell these kids on like maybe not the best choice for their future. It's like it's crazy. And that's where it becomes like then it probably is so salesy on the front end. And then as soon as they get there, the coach is all about like, okay, we need to do what's best for us winning. And that's not you today. That's you sitting on the bench. And then the kid's like, whoa, like I was told during my recruiting process, I was
mm,
so good. I was, some coaches are promising starting spots. Some coaches are saying like, oh, you're going to play all 4 years. And then, the next year, a D1 kid decides they want to stay closer to home and they're on the
mm.
team. Well, now that kid's on the bench forever. Like,
Yeah.
and so it's so crazy. There's like so much that goes into it, but like the selling aspect is what really like kind of sends me like over the edge.
Yeah, that was the part that got at me the most because I would say for me the best and worst part of coaching was the recruiting of the worst part was having to tell kids like it's not your dream is not going to happen here, you
Yeah.
know, and especially kids that came to you and said you're the only D1 school that reached out and you can see it in their eyes and you think back to when that was you and you're like, oh, this stinks. But the flip side, the
Right.
best part is getting to tell kids like we want you, and see that dream come true. And then even better, watch them, turn into the thing you hope they could be. But,
Yeah.
I was at a program where, a realistic pitch would have been, hey, we're going to try our best, but we're probably not going to win the national title. I can almost guarantee you we're not going to win the national title during your 4 years here. So if you want to be a champion, this probably isn't the school for you. Maybe we'll win our conference 50-50 potentially.
Yeah.
Could happen. You never know. We're going to bring a lot of kids in because we want a lot of competition because there's not really anybody who stands out right now, but we think you'd be good in that competition. Like, this is not a selling point for kids. They're going to be like, why would I come here? This sounds
Right.
awful. But that would be an honest, pitch of this is what it
Right.
looks like.
Yeah. And that's what kind of like, I feel like if a lot of coaches told the honest truth of like what the kid was going to getting
Mm,
like being at that school, they probably wouldn't get the kids.
no.
Like they honestly like wouldn't. And then like even, and kids in high school don't think about that. They don't think about like, what conference is this team in? Are they going to win the conference every year? Are they going to compete with conference every year? Or are they going to be shut out of playoffs every single year? Because there's certain conferences where like that's the case for a lot of teams. And
Yeah.
like if you're at the bottom, if you're, 10 out of 10 the year before you're going there, chances are you're probably not going to win it your fourth year. Like that would be a huge like overhaul and like a huge turning. And if that's what you're being promised, like what are the steps the coach is taking or the school
Mm,
is taking to get that team there? Because it doesn't happen overnight. And it
no.
usually doesn't happen with one really great kid committing. So you can't just lie on like, oh, I'm that kid that's going to turn the whole program around.
Yeah.
Like, so there's just so much. I think like the conference thing is a bit like when you actually sell a kid on like what the true like trajectory of the team is,
Yeah.
that's where I feel like coaches would like they would never say that. And like they just want to kind of like brush over that because there's just certain like
Yeah.
it's like you're not going to sell a kid on that. You're never going to get a kid telling them like, well, we're never going to go to playoffs in your 4 years here, or we're never going to even compete because this one school has like a chokehold on the conference. But it's like the truth.
Yeah. I mean, it's for women's hockey. It's like unless you play at Wisconsin or Ohio State, this is probably national championships not happening. I don't know if you've watched, but they play every single year against each other for the
Really?
past 6 years. That's not changing this year. So
Yeah.
I remember one time we would do a prospects camp, which was so funny to me because there was like two girls there that were actually prospects. The rest were just
Yes.
like filling the camp, but we called it a prospects camp so they could say, and I'm sure like they went off and told everybody like I went to a prospects camp, that sort of thing. But we did like
Right.
a Q&A at one point, and one of the girls asked afterwards, she's like, "Is being a D1 athlete as fun as it looks?" And I was like, "That's a very interesting question because honest to God, no. Like, I don't think it's as fun as it looks. Like, you don't understand the amount of mental stress you're signing up for right now. Like, the physical and mental stress of this is going, by the time you graduate, I'm 95% sure that you are going to be so ready to be done that you're going to probably take some time off and just like try to find the love of the game again. Like, you should
Right.
talk to kids 1 year out. They're going to be like, oh,
Right.
I'm sick of it. Like, I'm so ready to be on. I haven't touched a volleyball, I haven't touched the ice in a year. Like, I need to step away. That was too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I feel like that's really real. But I do feel like people glamorize it now. But that's like a pro and con of like social media being more like out there. And like obviously we
Mm,
see it on TikTok all the time. And like I follow some D1 volleyball programs and they're like, oh, t a day in the life of whatever. And it's like them like packing their bag for their away trip and like their locker room, like their really fancy locker room, everything. It's like, yeah, show us a day in the life of the travel day. That's what I want. Like you're on the plane for how long? Then you're on a bus to the school. Then you're doing serve and pass once you get there. Then you're eating who knows what. And then you're waking up the next day to like do it all over again. Like that's
yeah.
the day in the life that you like really portrays it. Or like the day in life where you're not practicing or you're not doing one of those like cutesy like packing my bag to go to Penn State. Like, yeah, like that's great. But what are the other ones? What's like everything else? And like you said, there's just so like by the time people are done with it, like a lot of people are just done. Like just like take time off, reset, and like go on about your life, live your life like a normal person for a few months at least, and then we'll like reconvene and see if we still even are interested in playing ever again.
When you have kids come to you, how do you sort of deal with that? They come and they're telling you these dreams they have, and like you said, like it becomes very evident to you that not all of these are very realistic. How do you
Yeah.
approach those conversations of trying to get kids who have unrealistic expectations as far as what level they can play or as far as what it's going to be like? Or, a kid says, I really want to play in, this conference or that conference because of, or my parents played here, I want to play here. And then you kind of go like, I don't think that's happening. How do you handle those kids and try to redirect them?
Yeah, so one of the big things I've been like going with kids recently that I found has been super successful is like list out like your five non-negotiables when it comes to college. Like what are the five things you absolutely have to have? If it's D1 is one of those five things, and like I don't think that they're a fit, then it's like the next step is you have to cast the widest net you can possibly cast. Because chances are there might be one or two programs out there that are like really looking for somebody or they like need another person on the roster. But if that's not a non-negotiable and like I don't think that they're fit because I don't really like assess their talent necessarily like in the sport. Usually I'm just like, okay, like what's your, where do you play right now? Where are you from? Because a lot of kids are like, if they're from like the hotbed type of areas, chances are they have a lot more possibility of getting picked up by one of these like off-name D1 schools or like a D2 school that might offer them something. But we just go with like their non-negotiables, and then like from there, I try to realistically set out like a list of schools that would be the best fit for them. And we've actually like dabbled into Roster Hunter. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
A little
It's
bit,
like
yeah.
yeah, and they just it's a really easy way for a kid to search like a program that needs spots on the roster that has their non-negotiables. So if one of them is like most of the time it's not their academic program, is usually not the which is like that's where I'm like, okay, let's like reassess because college is a stepping stone. And like you said, like if you are, starting your recruiting process and you're not already being talked to by D1 coaches, chances are you're not going to go pro.
Yeah.
Most kids, like if they're coming to me or they're coming to somebody else for recruiting help, chances are they're not going to be picked up by one of those big name, huge teams that end up sending kids to go pro. So I'm like, let's reassess because college is going to be a stepping stone for you. And and even volleyball, like it just became a thing where there's pro leagues in this country. That was never
Mm,
even a thing until they might be on their third or fourth year now. I'm not
mm,
sure. But even then, it's like the best of the best. It's the absolute like top tier of the top. Those kids aren't coming to someone for recruiting help in their junior year of high school. Those kids have been, one of them I know, like she signed as an eighth grader. She's like
yeah.
verbally committing to one of those top schools. Like they're not coming to somebody on TikTok for help with recruiting. So we kind of like try to reassess like what are your non-negotiables? What's the goal you're trying to get to? And then what's the stepping stone we need here to get to that goal?
Mm,
Because so many like they just don't think about that like end result. Like when
yeah.
you graduate, what do you want to have? Do you want to have a job? Do you want to have, do you want to be in a location where, do you want to be in Silicon Valley because you're into like engineering stuff? Like, is that where you want to be? Because then that's going to change. You're probably not going from a school in Utica, New York to there. So like we need to like try to bridge that gap. So I really try to like work backwards with them of like
Mm,
where do you want to be? And then like, what's the stone that we need to find here that's going to get us to there? And that's different for everyone. And a lot of kids don't think of it that way. They just think, my next step is this. My next step is this. What's my next step? How do I get here?
mm.
But like, you need to get somewhere for the end goal,
Yeah.
So we try to like work backwards.
I remember when I was probably 13 or 14, we had those stud kids, that we all, everybody knows they're the best because we're doing like national camps and stuff like that. And they were the best then. They're going to be the best probably in 5, 6 years, right?
Hmm.
And I kind of got it in my head. Like, you don't know how the recruiting process works if you don't have someone to tell you that. And so in my head, I got this idea that I'm like, they're just going to come to me, me playing hockey in Maine. They're just going to magically find me. They have a list of all the players. They know me. They must know me. If I just play well, then they're going to come and find me. And then you get on the other side and you're like, oh, like, there's just so many kids. Like,
Yeah,
there are so many kids that I only knew about in that recruiting process because their goalie coach or their whatever coach was a friend of our coach and said, "Hey, this kid's good," and that's how I saw them. I wouldn't have
right.
found them otherwise. I'm not going to go through 130 pages of 15-year-olds
Right.
to figure out and watch, 30 minutes of video on all of them and figure out who the best kid is. Because the reality is like after a point, they just start to blend together. And I'm like, I don't
Right.
see a difference here, right? So, what is a good
Yeah, so
way?
many kids think the coaches are going to find them, and that's
Yeah,
like a huge thing.
that's exactly what I was going to ask about is, from the time they're 13, obviously recruiting is different now. There's new rules and when you can be recruited, but how should they realistically be assessing their recruiting process? And at what point should they think about, like, okay, I'm not going to be found. I need to start putting myself out there.
Yeah, so realistically, I start telling kids like ninth grade is really when a coach is probably, if you're not already being looked at, ninth grade is when you should really start like figuring out what your goals are. And obviously that's so hard because like ninth grade me was a lot different than 12th grade me and college me, obviously. But that's when you should really start like trying to do some outreach, sending your film out. And even though coaches can't talk to you, they can still watch you. They
Yeah.
can still look at you. And if you're in a decent area, they can still come to your club stuff because they're there for the, sophomores and juniors that they're looking at.
Mhm.
And then they can still, keep eyes on you. So I'd say like ninth grade is when I usually start telling kids, like if they're actually really talented kids and they actually want to do the work. Because another thing is a lot of people think if they come to me, I'll get them recruited. We're good. Like we're doing Empower volleyball athletic community. Like I'll be recruited. That's not the case. Like the kid still needs to send the emails. The kid still needs to form the relationships with the coaches.
Yeah.
Um, so like ninth grade is where I would really start like pushing kids to start sending out stuff. And even though the coach is not going to think you're annoying, I guarantee it. If they get three emails from you during your ninth grade year and another email from you at the beginning of your 10th grade year, then they're going to be like, oh, this kid is serious. They want to play. Let's start looking at the progression from ninth to 10th grade. Let's start looking at the progression for the next couple of years and see if this kid is someone that can seriously be on our roster. And I think that's like a big thing. Like you said, the kids think the coaches are going to find them. They're not going to find you. Like they're really not, unless you're in like one of these huge schools. Like there are a couple high schools who I
Yeah.
consistently see. Most of the roster goes D1 for volleyball specifically. Like there's a couple out of Kentucky where like they are going D1 almost every single kid because the coaches know them, the coaches know their coaches, like they know how they're brought up through the program, they know what skill sets they're
Yeah.
going to have when they're done, that type of thing. But unless you're one of those, like you need to really do your outreach and it probably needs to start like before 10th grade, honestly.
I 100% agree. And I think kids sometimes think that they'd be the only one doing it. Reaching out a couple times a year and then, once you said like the next year is so normal. Like no coach is going to
Hmm.
balk at it. There are a lot of kids that do that. And the goalie that we ended up taking, I can think of at least one. A bit like when I first saw her, I was like on the fence. But one of the things that put her over the edge was that she got into contact very early and I was able to
Hmm.
compare video of her over a 3 year period and be
Yeah.
like, she is visibly getting better, you know? So I can see progression. I can see that she's a good kid. Everything else checks out. I'm going to roll the dice on her. She seems to really want to play here. And I think she's going to
Yeah.
bring a great attitude. And the emails are, everything is spelled correctly. And, she's presenting herself well. Like,
Yeah.
this is the one versus some other kid who, like I said, like they start to blend together. And so
Yeah.
you got to do stuff off the field, off the court, off the ice, whatever, to differentiate yourself. And being
Yeah.
a professional is a great way to do it, even though you are young. Like,
Right.
gonna have to do it
And
sooner or
another thing
later.
too, that like really when you said the spelling correctly, like those emails, kids think that if they just email 100 coaches a week, they'll eventually get picked up by one. But then what happens is I get the email and it would say like, "Dear coach," and it's somebody else's name from like a similar school. And I'm like, "You're immediately off of my list." And like, so that's what I like help kids with. Make sure our email has the right coach's name, the right
Yeah,
school's name, and then a reason why you want to play at that program, a reason you're interested in that school, a reason you're interested in that program specifically.
yeah,
And then the coach is going to be like, oh, okay. Like I could actually see this kid because like you said, you have to be professional about it, even though they're young.
yeah.
And that's where like obviously some parents help more than others. And so I've talked to a lot of parents with like, how do I help my kid? How do I help my kid? I'm like, at the end of the day, your kid needs to be sending these emails and they need to know what
Mhm.
coach they're emailing, what program is where, and like they need to do a little bit of legwork on their side of it. It can't just be coming from the parents.
I find more often than not, parents, like the best parent is a net neutral effect on their kid.
Yeah.
Like it's almost a situation where you can only hurt them by, trying to come up and schmooze a coach or, I don't care how many other schools talk to your kid. You don't need to come up and be like, yeah, we were at so and so last week and they did this and they did that. Like I want to think it's with good intentions of you trying to show that your kid is wanted and,
Right.
you're proud of them, they're your kid, that sort of thing, but you're really not helping their case because all I'm thinking is this guy is going to be a huge pain in the butt if we bring this kid
Yes.
on. The kid is great, but I'm going to be hearing from this dad all the time. He's going to drive up for games and then come and ask why the kid's not playing. And he's going to be in this kid's ear when the kid's having a tough time. And it's just going to create all these problems. I'd rather not deal with it.
Yeah, no, 100%. There's like a lot of red flags like we picked up from the parent. And then the other thing too, like not only could the parent be like one of those annoying parents, but also like have you raised your kid to hold a conversation with an adult? That was the part that always like, and I don't want to blame COVID, but especially after COVID, I feel like with the men's side of it, it got like crazy. I'm like, I'm sitting in my office. I have a kid that I really want to come play talent-wise. He's very good. He's sitting over there in the corner, hasn't said a single thing. Mom has controlled the entire conversation. He doesn't even look up at me. He walks out of my office. I say to my like colleague, I'm never seeing that kid again. There's no shot he's coming here. And then the kid commits like 2 days later. And I'm like, you didn't say a single word to me. So it was just that he couldn't carry on a conversation with an adult.
It's so bad.
And
It's
like
so bad.
that's part of parenting.
I don't, yeah, like you said, I don't want to blame COVID, but I mean, so I went from coaching primarily men's hockey to the opposite of you, coaching women's hockey, thinking in my head, like, oh, it's going to be the same thing. It's hockey. Hockey is hockey. Not thinking like the locker room dynamics are going to be totally
Yeah.
different. The average age of a men's hockey player in college is 20. A lot of them play junior hockey.
Yeah.
So they're a
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
older. They've been on their own before. They're, not to say they're more mature because, there are college boys still, but like, a lot of these girls are 17, 18 years old. Like this is their first time ever away from home unless they played prep. And, you're dealing with kids and talking to them and hearing like didn't have any prom. No prom, like COVID, just never got out, couple of them like their first dates ever were in college, you know.
Oh yeah.
And so you're seeing like I told like coaches like I feel like I'm coaching like a ninth grader. Like mentally, that's where I feel like I'm coaching. I feel like I'm in a camp working with young kids, and it's like all the same things, and it just
Right.
adds like a whole different dimension to this. Of obviously as a coach, you have to maintain and keep an eye on the mental health of your players, and the issues that they would have when I started versus now are just totally different. And like you said, like they'll
Yeah.
come in, they won't look at you. They'll and like, is this the same person that wrote an email to me?
Right.
Because your email was
Right.
great. Your email was great. There were full sentences. There were no pauses. You were using great words. And I don't
Right.
see, you're like, we had one person that I was talking to on their tour, and I made a joke, and they went, "Oh, LOL." It's like, you can just laugh. That is an
Right.
option. You don't have to
Right.
say LOL.
Right. No, and I think it's like I mean, it definitely I see the same thing with volleyball. Like I was assistant coaching with the I mean, women specifically, I feel like it's so different than like the men's.
Yeah.
I don't know, like I'm not gonna say I like one over the other, but it's just so different.
Yeah.
And I was assistant coaching the women's team when I first started in 2017. And then to 2024, like the issues that the girls have amongst each other with the coaches, the like just the attitude difference is actually like insane. And I'm like, what is causing this? But I think it's just they're not like forced to be out and about and like they don't think there's consequences for the way that they talk to people
Mhm.
or, things that they do behind the scenes that maybe is not right in front of the coach. But then it gets back to the coach, and then all
Yep.
of a sudden it's like, oh, you're coming after me. It's like, no, you did something you shouldn't do. Like, there's a difference.
Yeah. It's, you're an adult. You're 18. You can
Right.
you can vote. You can do all of these things. You are an adult. You're on your own, and we're going to give you hopefully give you some grace period of, I understand this first semester is going to be tough and you got to figure stuff out and all of that sort of thing. But like, you do got to get your stuff together eventually.
Right.
I found the
Right.
exact same thing of there was problems with the men's and there was problems with the women's and it was totally different. And which one I would prefer really just ended up being the one I wasn't dealing with at the moment, where I was like, you know what, men's isn't that bad. And then you get to men's, you're like, I'd trade this out. It's just, it's different problems. But like you said, the locker room dynamics were insanely different. I
Yeah.
I remember one girl, this we were asking her about the teammates because we got to find a captain here. Like,
Right.
who amongst this group of underdeveloped people is going to lead them into the future? And one of the girls described them. We were like trying to like, are you guys bonding off? Are you meeting up at all for even for coffee, just like to
Right.
chat, like anything? And she goes, they're just, they're my coworkers. And I was like, that is a wild way to describe your teammates. Like, those were
Right.
like some of my best friends ever,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
and like
Yeah. I mean, my teammate was my maid of honor.
yeah,
Like,
like
and I
that
was
was how
hers.
it,
Like,
yeah, I was how it always was. And like, at
yeah.
least when I started, and like, there were obviously people who had issues with people on the team, and like, you didn't get along with everybody, but I never heard anyone describe them as like a coworker.
Right. Yeah, and that's what like one of the things we do a lot with the high schoolers is like teaching them not only to like be like helping them get recruited, but like be a better recruit. And like that
Yeah.
all goes into it. Like being a better recruit translates to being a better teammate.
Hmm.
And like that's just so important. And even if you're not on the floor, like being a good teammate is going to help your team to be successful and like have a good experience doing it. And like I feel like that part of athletics has really gone like downhill, honestly. Like a lot of people are just not thinking that way. And, that comes out a lot in the recruiting process, obviously. And it's coaches pick up on it really quickly, especially when it's coaches like, our age older, like they pick up on that very quickly because they've seen it. They've seen other
Yeah.
kids come in with the same attitude, with the same, like, oh, I'm going to come in here and just rule the roost. And then they've seen what it does to the team. And that's like one of the things we help a lot of kids with is like, how do you be a better recruit and then be a good teammate once you're there?
Do you have any advice that you give kids for their visits? Because, a lot of times, I mean, I know for during our visits, like you're obviously with the coaches and you're meeting coaches, but you spend a lot of time just with the girls and
Yeah.
or the guys, and like we ask them afterwards, what were you like? Were you weird? Like, what was the deal?
Yeah.
And, a lot of kids like, you know, everyone's heard the wild visit stories of,
Right.
people like Gronkowski and that sort of thing. But like, do you have like general advice you give kids and like how do you navigate that visit?
Yeah, so like one of the big things that we really talk to them a lot about, which always like it's just so crazy, is like you have to be professional, even though obviously you're trying to find like what your fit. Like
Hmm.
wait, dress appropriately. Dress, not only appropriately for the weather, but like don't wear pajama pants to like the visit. Like, I know you just drove 2.5 hours, but like fix it up. Like stop at a rest stop and like at least look the part a little bit.
Yeah.
And then like when you're there, like you really have to be asking good questions, but then like soaking in the information and like reading between the lines. But they're going to be doing the same to you. So if like, it's actually funny though, because my very best friend, she was a recruit when I was a sophomore in college.
Hmm.
And the coach asked me afterwards, like, oh, what'd you think of her? And I was like, do not bring her here. She was terrible. I'm like, she knew every football player in the dining hall. She was talking to the guys more than she was talking to us, like all this. And then they were desperate for players because we were actually like pretty terrible at that point. And so they brought her in anyway because she was good. And like now she's my absolute best friend. And like, so like you can't always judge a person by the recruiting visit, obviously, but like they will be judging you the whole time. So like act like it. Like pay
Yeah.
attention to that. Like don't be, the very first second you're there. And like I've had kids tell me too, like, oh, as soon as he came back to the dorms with us, he just asked like, where are we going tonight?
Yeah.
What's the party? Like, where are we headed? Who's buying stuff for us? Like, and they're going to report that back to the coach.
Yeah.
And like, they're not stupid. They're going to see. And a lot of times coaches put players with the recruit that they trust. And those players are usually the players who want the team to succeed. So they're not going to want to bring in a teammate who's just worried about where the party is on Friday night and isn't asking any questions about the school or, actually trying to bond with any of these guys. They're just asking, where are the
Yeah.
girls? Where are
Yeah.
we, they're
Yeah.
going to report back.
Right. Like it's, to say that that's not a part of college sports would just be a lie. But,
Right.
you know, you there are a lot of college athletes. There are a lot of college athletes. And, you hear about the outliers on the good and the
Right.
bad side, but it doesn't match up with the vast majority of them because, once you're a college athlete, it's not as simple as just going out to a party. Like,
Right.
if you go out and you get caught doing something, you're donezo. There's nothing the coach can do about it.
Right.
We had some really good players on not on my team, but on other teams who were fantastic, who had to leave because of partying issues. And there's nothing the coach would stop it in an instant if they could, because these kids were fantastic, right?
Right.
But there's only so much you can do.
Right.
And it ends up just kind of being a party of you and your teammates at the end of the day a lot of the time, or you and like kids from a couple other teams. And like,
Right.
it's not this wild, exciting time at a frat house like a lot of people try to think that it is, because you have all these things you have to worry about. So, if that's what you're
And then
going
not
to,
only that too, but like the grade thing too, like you
yeah,
have to pay attention, especially at the D3 level. Like there's
yeah,
only so much a coach can do. If you fail out, you fail out. Like
yeah.
there's no coming back from that.
I
And
would.
like
I would also
the whole
challenge any
year.
kid, like, let me know 3/4 of the way through the season after you get back from a road trip at like 1 a.m. in the morning, how much you want to go out and party then. You're
Right.
gonna want to go home and just drop into bed. We have a lot of kids that like will purposely live away from the rest of the students, not because they're like antisocial, but just because like the students will be partying because they don't have any of those
Right.
responsibilities. You need to get
Right.
to bed because you have to wake up and do so much homework and crush it on Sunday, and then wake
Right.
up for 5 a.m. lift on Monday.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the whole party thing does not, it's not what you think it's gonna be.
No, it's like it's crazy that people think that that's like as an athlete that that's like a huge part of it because it's once you're there you're gonna realize it's so not a huge part of it.
Yeah. By the time you get to it, you're not gonna have any energy for it. Yeah.
No,
It's
no.
just so
And like you don't want the repercussions of it either. Because like if you're actually invested in the team, like you don't want to get in trouble for that.
yeah.
You don't want UP calling coach at 2 in the morning because they just pulled you up off the sidewalk. Like
We a lot of teams have dry seasons too. And
yeah,
I hate to say it, but if you think your teammates aren't gonna rat you out,
right.
they're
And when you put it on Snapchat, they're
yeah.
showing coach the next morning.
Oh yeah, that one girl on the team who does not like you, who is competing for
Right.
your job, she's gonna let them know first
For
thing in the morning
sure.
that
For
that was what you
sure.
were doing. And the
And too,
social,
like I always would tell my kids like the science behind like staying up late, the
mm,
substances that are involved in partying most of the time,
yeah.
the food that's ingested during partying most of the time, like it's just not going to benefit you. And like there's so much behind that. Like we do not need to like at this point these kids should know that. Like it's just not going to help you out.
I will say I feel like I have seen an uptick in kids who are more health conscious and health optimizing. It's come with its own issues, especially on like the female side, because
Hmm.
a lot of it's not like a widely publicized thing, but the amount of eating disorders that are existent in female athletes at the college level is double, triple the normal population
Yeah.
because you have to deal with obviously the issues of social media and how you look like on there. And like, but you also have to be built for your sport.
Right.
And, if you're a pitcher for softball, that may not end up being the ideal Instagram body,
Right. Right.
but that's how you have to look to perform.
Right.
And it's kind of been the opposite I found lately of like, finding girls that are too restrictive because they're trying to optimize off this, I heard this podcast and now I'm doing this thing. And I'm like, I wish you wouldn't. I wish you
Yeah.
would listen to the professionals we have here a little bit
Right.
more, but a lot of
Or like
schools
they
don't.
want to look a certain way. And I feel like that's it comes with certain sports too, like opposite though, like where like they have to look a certain way to perform a certain way.
Mm,
And like, I mean, and a lot of times it's like there's so much I could go into this for like an hour. I will say like during my college experience, like being an exercise science student, so I was like learning about, calories and the science behind nutrition and everything. And
yeah.
then I was also on the volleyball team and I was lifting every day and I was like trying to compete for a starting spot. And like there was, I think it was my junior year, where like
Mm.
I definitely was like every calorie I took in, I would go on the elliptical at night until I burnt off that many calories because I was like freaking out about it. Because I was like, if I gain weight, I won't have as high as a vertical, and then like I won't be as fast, and like
Mm.
blah blah blah. And then I'm like in class and I'm learning about like once your body has a fat cell, it never goes away. It just can get smaller or bigger. And then I'm like, oh my God, like now I'm like done for. So like, I mean, I could go into this forever. And I feel
Yeah.
like there's just so much. And then like you see on, and that was before social media. Like I was in
Mm.
college 2010 to 14. So like that was before obviously like Instagram had just become a thing, I think. I think I
Mm.
had it like the last year of college maybe. And it wasn't like it is now.
Yeah.
Don't mind my cat. It's just here with us. But now like even with TikTok and Snapchat too, like I can only imagine like you also see these girls who, women who have had work done that you don't even know they had done. And like half their body isn't
Mm.
even real. It's all fake. And then they're not eating correctly to fuel themselves. They're not playing a sport. They're on TikTok doing a few dances every day
Yeah.
and selling some face wash. Like that's different than performing at an athletic level.
It's tough now too because of NIL and just the problem is like a lot of these female athletes that build big NIL profiles, it's not because of their, sport performance
Yeah.
versus guys who that seems to be the majority of it. Almost all of them
Right.
are sport performance based. And,
Yeah.
for a lot of these girls, it's the the decision of do I keep my Instagram private and, not deal with that whole shebang to whatever degree, or do I want to pursue NIL and look at these bags that some of these girls are getting? I'm hearing Livy Dunn's getting $5-6 million. Like, is
Right.
that true? Is that not true? Could I get $5 million? That sort of thing. And we actually had a girl on our team who partly through the season after I left, she went viral and 20,000 followers plus overnight and ended
Hmm.
up deleting her Instagram account momentarily because she was like, this is crazy. Like I can't deal with this. But,
Yeah.
I talked to her a few times about it of like, there's a lot of money potentially on the table for you here,
Yeah.
and it's kind of the same at lower levels too of, they can't revenue share with you, but if you get an NIL deal, if you're able to build a brand, there is money there.
Right.
That
Or even
could.
like on TikTok now, so many of these girls make like a big following and then they can
Mm.
sell stuff on like TikTok shop and they can post their lives of like getting ready for the game
Yeah.
and people are in there giving them gifts and like they're probably making a decent amount compared to like my work study check when I was in, in college. Like they're probably making a
Huh.
really decent amount and it really doesn't have to do with their athletic performance. It's
No.
game. They're doing their hair and their slick backs and they're doing what, natural looking makeup they're putting on for today. And like
Yeah.
that has not like imagine a guy out there like get ready for my hockey game with me. Like no one's watching
Yeah.
that. Like
Let me probably put on some self tanner before the game today.
right.
Yeah. No, there and it kind of factors into recruiting a little bit. I know I've talked to some coaches where they're like, we need to boost attendance. This girl
Yeah.
has 50,000 followers. Frat boys are going to show up, and when they show
Right.
up, they're rowdy, and it does contribute to atmosphere a little bit, and it will, help us out. And you're like, is she good though? And you're like, it,
Right.
it becomes this thing of even if you're not amazing, you can get to good schools because you do bring in a lot of fans. And that was actually
Yeah.
one thing I wanted to ask you about was, talking to kids about just because you start at Division 3, like if you wanted to play for, let's say you wanted to play for Nebraska volleyball, right? And you're a really good player and talking to them and saying, hey, if you view this as like a 4-year journey and saying, I'm going to start year one, maybe D3 or D1, somewhere I can play, and I'm just going to crush it. And then I'm going to use this new transfer portal where I can play the next year immediately. And I'm going to try to work my way up to, mid-major D1, a really good mid-major D1 for 2 years and crush it again. And then my senior year, make that push to see if I can get on Nebraska's team as a 1-year transfer and I get to have my dream.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a real possibility. I've seen a lot of girls, it's kind of like an off chance sometimes. I saw one girl specific I'm thinking of. She played at like a really mid D2 school and she was very good. And then she actually transferred to Florida when Florida Gators were like very good at volleyball. And they've taken a little downturn, unfortunately. I'm a big fan, but
We
and
wish them well.
then she was a setter and the starting setter actually got hurt, so she had to play the whole year. And she actually became very like well loved there.
Mm.
And she became obviously popular on social media. And now I think she's playing in a pro league right now.
Oh,
And like
cool.
she wouldn't have ever probably done that if she had stayed at the mid like D2 school. And she would have been obviously great there. I think she was like
Mm.
all conference, all American D2, whatever it was. For her couple years she was there. And then when she transferred to Florida, she was the backup. She was the backup setter. She was not going to, probably not going to play over the starting setter in any of those big games. And then she got her chance because of an injury, unfortunately. And now I see her on social media all the time. And I'm like, wow, good for her. Like, how amazing is that? That, like, she took a chance on herself going there. And if it didn't take a turn for, the better for her, obviously, worse
Mm.
for the starting setter. And everyone else included in the injury situation, she probably wouldn't have these opportunities, but there is. And I feel like that's another thing that girls specifically don't think that they think that if they get to their school their freshman year and they're not playing their first game, it's over for them. They're done. Like they just like, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like kind of the all or nothing perspective or like
Mm.
because they think that they want that instant gratification like right now,
Mm.
but I see it all the time, like every division. Like if they don't get what they want that first year, which obviously the transfer portal has probably made that a little bit worse because they are like, I can just go somewhere else and get it. It's
Mm.
like, yeah, you sure can. Um, but they think that if they're not starting or they're not where they want to be that first year, like they're just done. That's it. When like there is like there's a ladder that you can climb and like everyone's looks a little bit differently. And some people that's starting at D2 and eventually getting to D1 and then now in the pro leagues. And sometimes it's starting at JUCO and then you're getting your
Mm.
D1 or D2 offers from there. And people think that if you're not just high school and you're not, senior night, you don't have that Penn State or Nebraska or Texas like poster to put up that you're just might as well just like call it quits, it's like it's over. But there is like a ladder, and I feel like certain people's ladder starts earlier and certain people's
Mm.
ladder starts later. And certain people, the ceiling is where the ceiling is, and some people's it's way higher. And like it is what it is. And like just having that tenacity, I think, to like go through it is something that coaches see and they respect a lot more than kids think that they do.
Yeah.
Like they don't see that. The coaches see that, but the kids don't see that their hard work could eventually pay off if they just keep at it.
Yeah, absolutely. We took a kid who won essentially like MVP for D3 her 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 final year. And it was she had like COVID years, so she was one of these girls that played like 6, 7 years of college
Yeah.
sports. And um for her last year, she's like, I want to play D1. And it wasn't this situation of like this girl that just transferred all the time and that just jump programs, because that's kind of a red flag to me. Like, why can't you stay
Yeah.
anywhere? What's the
Yeah.
problem? But she was with the program, captain under good, took her in, and she was a great player because just the best D3 players are better than the worst D1 players.
Yes. And
And
that's something that people don't think of too. Like
yeah,
it's so true. So
they're
true.
so much better. There's plenty of D1 players that I would argue aren't even college athlete quality if
Yeah.
it was entirely merit based, but their dad had a lot of money to pour into the program for some renovation. So here they
Right.
are on the team. But like it's such a different thing with the portal. And like the portal would have been sit out a year when you were playing, right?
Yes.
It
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
I remember it was very rare when my freshman year of college was 2016. And it very rare that a kid would jump into things
Yeah.
had to be awful for them to jump
Yeah.
into the transfer portal. And now
No, for
it's,
sure.
it's all the time. So
It's crazy.
do you have any kids that come to you for that recruiting specifically of whatever that situation is of like, I'm not playing, I want to go somewhere playing, or I'm D1, I think I might want to drop to D3 so I can play some more, or just whatever with this new portal system?
I've had a few. So when I was still coaching, the last 2 years, I did have one kid who didn't, she actually didn't end up making the team at the school she went to. She
Hmm.
was not guaranteed a spot, but she was like told like, oh, come and like do the tryout and like we'll keep you, whatever. And then they didn't end up keeping her for whatever reason. And that could be, like I said, like somebody else transferred in or
Yeah.
somebody else decided they're gonna walk on and obviously they're better. Um, so I did have one, but I haven't worked with a ton of transfer situations, honestly.
Mhm.
But again, like that one was like I think the kid thought she was a lot better than she was.
Mhm.
So she didn't make the team for a reason. And then she ended up making, it was the year that I was leaving. I was like talking to her about the following year. So
Mhm.
she actually did play on the team this past year and she did okay. She was
Okay.
fine, but
What do
she's
you
doing
think
fine.
about a lot of these kids, specifically kids that come to you interested in D1, who are interested in like how much can I get paid? Right?
Yeah.
And that's a big conversation now. And one of the things that I try to impress upon kids is scholarship money is still money. Like that's
Yeah.
still them giving you tens of thousands of dollars potentially. So let's not overlook the fact that they are paying for your whole tuition potentially. So
Right.
how do you help kids navigate through that money talk of how much of a scholarship am I getting? What is a full scholarship equivalency if they offer me a half? What does that mean? Versus, they're telling me I need to apply for these academic rewards and they're gonna combine it will be a full scholarship or, you know, NIL money of, how do I ask about that and revenue and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, so I feel like that's like it's so tricky. It's so, so, so tricky. And it's so dependent upon the personality of the student, like how much is their family invested in this? Because if dad's in the back of the call being like, well, she's only going to these schools because they promised her she, be on their commercial, or they
Mhm.
promised her they, do this or that. It's just so difficult to tell a kid what the right choice is because at the end of the day, like we can never tell them what the right choice is. They really have to, like I said before, like kind of go their non-negotiables. Is your non-negotiable a full ride? If it is, then obviously that's going to keep us to a certain level of schools that are giving you that opportunity. Is it, can we stack scholarships to make it so it's affordable? So you get a little bit for athletics, maybe you get a little bit academics and like merit-based stuff, and then we see what it looks like there. Is it just going to play at a big name school so that you're getting other money? So maybe you're not on scholarship, but you're getting the NIL possibilities that you
Mhm.
don't get at other schools. So it's just so based on like personality, I feel like of the student, what's important to them. And then again, like the talent level too. A lot of kids like think that, oh, I want to get a D1 scholarship because this person got a D1 scholarship and I'm better than them and blah blah blah. But like they don't realize how much goes into the back end of like a coach offering someone a D1 scholarship is not just, okay, let me find the best however many athletes this year that we have available to give scholarships to. It's so much more than that. It's like the coach wants to see the potential for the 4 years. The coach wants to see what else do they bring to the table. It's not just, okay, well, your teammate from 3 years ago that you played with on varsity got a full ride to whatever it is. Does not mean just because you're better, you have better high school stats this year, you're going to get a full
Mhm.
ride there. So a lot of it is like checking in with the kid of like, what's realistic, what's important to you, and then we kind of go through the options from there. But a lot of it also then comes down to like, are you getting the exposure that you need for this? Because if you're make it or break it is a D1 full ride, but you play in Canton, New York, like, well, actually for hockey that might be good.
That might not be
I
too
don't
bad.
know.
That might be a good spot to be.
Yeah, but like if you're playing from like, you know, wherever, some no-name city, like you need to get the exposure. And they're not coming to your high school games and they're
Yeah.
not offering you a full ride at your high school senior night. Like you need to get the exposure early
Mhm.
and put yourself out there and do all those things we talked about before, like being professional, showing them what else you bring to the table other than just your athletic ability. Because I guarantee you, like again, most of these kids, your athletic ability can be sought out higher athletic ability can be found anywhere for the most part. So
Yeah.
you need to make sure that you're in check with that, but then also what's important to you. And then we kind of just go through it from there as far as like their personality. And it's like a slippery slope, I feel like, really. There's a lot of questions that come up when it comes to money in college. And
Mhm.
there's a lot more parent involvement whenever we're talking money. When they're
Yeah.
talking athletic scholarship, there is all of a sudden dad's on the call, all of a sudden, ears are perked because now we're talking about our kid getting money for school instead of just
Yeah.
playing. So it's a lot. And then, there's the other thing too is like the getting into school. So like family income is a big thing
Yeah.
and like being transparent about that. And some schools are transparent about the admissions process, even as far as like they don't give, either they don't give merit scholarships away or it's going to cost X amount of money. Some of those bigger like NESCAC D3 programs, like
Yeah.
they pay attention to your parents' income to even admit you into the school. So like there's just so much that goes into it. I feel like when the money talk starts going, then it's
Yeah.
like a whole different. We need to do a whole call on this. We need to do a whole revamp of what we're talking about.
Yeah. And I've seen it too. A lot of kids will show up and be like, I heard so and so Michigan's giving them $100,000 this year. I want blah blah blah. I'm like, who told you this kid's getting?
Right.
I read it on ESPN. Well, that might not be entirely accurate. These numbers that you're
Right.
seeing, that might not be entirely. That's not just how it works. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I try to tell kids, like, okay, so the Texas is for their whole department limited at 22 million dollars that they can revenue share with kids, right? And you've just told me that Arch Manning is getting seven and that
Right.
his wide receivers are each getting five. Well, that's 17. So
Right.
the numbers don't add up. There's no way they're giving all of these kids this money because they're also apparently giving money to other sports too. Like they have to give it
Right.
out to women's teams as well. Like Title
Right.
IX is a thing. So
Hmm.
let's slow our roll on how much you can get here, right?
Right.
And
And then there's so much with like donors, like personal donors that can give to schools for certain
yeah,
reasons. And then you see it on Reddit, like this girl got paid this much to transfer here. And it's like,
yeah,
okay, like who's telling you this? Where is this money coming from? And then like, even with the Manning thing, like, okay, well that's Arch Manning. So if he is getting that much, like good for him. Chances are Texas has been looking at him since he was crawling. So like that's not you.
yeah.
So like that's the other thing is people get these weird expectations of like well, this kid got this much, so I am in that same realm. And it's like, you're
Mhm.
probably not. Like,
Yeah.
chances are.
Yeah, even kids that come in and be like, "Well, I'm 50, I'm half as good as Arch Manning is, so I should be 3.5."
Right.
And I'm like, "That's not how this works."
Not how this works whatsoever.
That's
And then
not
like
how it
even
works.
with like those bigger programs too, like the ties they have to alumni and the people who are giving like
Yeah.
big donations is crazy. So there's just I feel like the money thing is just like it's just crazy.
Yeah,
It's honestly
and
crazy.
I'll say too, like I know programs like the way that they're paying kids, like this is going to be a big problem, I would guess, in the next 3 years. Like there's going to be some big lawsuits because I've seen I've seen kids that their NIL deal is like jobs, like
Yeah.
guaranteed
Yeah, yeah.
jobs. And I've seen kids where, you know, they like their country pays for tuition a little bit if they play in the United States. Some countries have
Hmm.
like these like college support programs and like teams trying to figure out how they can super bill it so that the country pays the university and then the university gives that money to the team and then the team gives it to the player as like
Oh my
NIL
gosh.
money and
Yeah.
then gives them a full scholarship on top of it and
Yeah.
you're just like somebody is going to prison overall. It's like this is not legal.
Right.
This is all,
Yeah.
but kids want money now and they're trying to be competitive. And even if you can give a kid like 10 grand or 20 grand, like kids are gonna be like, sick, awesome,
Right.
super
Right.
cool, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, just because if you want money too, like another thing to keep in mind is like just because a school is good doesn't mean they got donors ready to throw money around.
Right.
Maine, for example, has a very good men's hockey team. We do not have donors throwing billions of dollars our way. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
we've got like one family that we source all of our money from. Shout out to the Alphons. But like some like Penn State, they literally 3 years ago, 4 years ago, were a nothing college hockey team. And then,
Yeah.
a couple big donors came in and said, I love hockey. I want my Penn State team to be good. Here's all the money in the world. And a couple of years later, they're top 10 in the nation. Fancy that.
Right.
But,
Right.
who knows how this money's getting paid out with like collectives and all of these different things. And so, what do you tell kids like you have to make sure you maintain eligibility. Like that
Right.
is clearinghouse is a big part of this. There were a lot of girls that I
Yeah.
wanted. There was a Russian girl specifically that I really wanted because she was so good, and just getting her through clearinghouse was just not going to be possible, pretty
Yeah.
much, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And she never came. So how do you tell kids of like, hey, be on the lookout for these things. Like compliance is very complicated, clearinghouse is very tricky. Make sure you
Yeah.
got these things in order. And these are some red flags to look out. If someone says this to you, I want you to smile and say thank you, but don't shake hands, don't sign your name on anything. Like we need to
Yeah.
be careful about these big things.
Yeah, mainly like it's going through like the courses that they have on there and making sure they're aware of like the absolute no's. Like,
Hmm.
and then you just always making sure that they're asking. I don't do a ton with compliance, but we have someone like in our with our recruiting service that does all the compliance stuff and making sure before, like you said, before you're signing anything, before you're saying, yeah, I'll do that, or like whatever, you are going through the compliance because like you said, like once you're X'd out, you're X'd out. Like there's no coming back from that most of the time. And like that
Hmm.
can be your whole career then. And so just making sure that they're like aware of the rules, aware there are rules. Some kids are like, wait, what do you mean? I can't have like this or that, or I can't sign on with this person. I'm like, no, 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 no. Like
Yeah.
we need to like you need to meet NCAA eligibility. And that once you're done, you're done.
Yeah.
So just making sure they're asking the right questions beforehand, making sure they're getting all the information and then like some of those bigger, if it's a bigger thing, like let's get legal services involved because like I'm not going to tell you, yeah, sign this contract with this company and then all of a sudden you're done for. So I make sure that they go through the right resources as far as like compliance, making
Mhm.
sure that everything is kosher on that side, and then just making sure that they're aware of the rules too, because it can't just be oh, I signed this because, this person told me I could. Well, did you even look at the stuff? Like, did you even read it? Were your parents involved at that point? Because these are children still,
Yeah.
a lot, like they're young enough where like, let's make sure that we have multiple eyes on this situation. So I make sure I direct them in the right
Mhm.
to the right people to get help and guidance with that because I'm not an expert at it at all. That's not, working with D3, I never really had to be. We did like our one compliance test every year, and it was like you can't like certain things on social media. Okay, cool. Like
Okay.
it was a lot about like X and like what you could do on there. But I just make sure they know the resources they have
Yeah.
available to them to help them with that.
One thing I would really love to know is say, 13-year-old you came to you right now for recruiting, but it's modern day. So it's the current
Yeah.
system and all that stuff. How would you have walked yourself through the modern system, knowing what you know, looking back and, knowing what you know about yourself and what college turned out to be and the
Yeah.
opportunities that are here now?
Um, One big thing that I would say is pay attention to the finances of college, whether you're getting paid to play or not. Like that's
Mhm.
such a big thing because obviously now like student loans are a huge thing. Thankfully mine are gone. My God. But I went to a state school and I got academic scholarships. And so, if you're not getting paid to play, which so like the amount of kids that get paid to play in college is so, so small compared to the number of high school athletes out there. Like I think what is it like 7% of high school athletes even become college athletes in general?
Yeah, it went down last I checked. It was closer to like six. It's not very high.
So then the number of that are actually getting paid, full rides is it's got to be like 1% or lower. There's no
Yeah.
way. Like I don't even
Yeah.
know what it would be.
It's not very high at all. I think it depends on the sport, but like,
Yeah,
football kids, there's a lot of them that are on scholarship, but like there are whole sports whole teams where you won't have a single scholarship kid.
right.
I think
Yeah, and like
yeah, cross country,
right.
we love
Yeah.
them, but like you're not
So
on scholarship, so
right. So I think paying attention to finances is like one of the biggest things I would tell myself, which like thankfully I did that smart, which just was by happenstance. I didn't like actually pay attention to it. And then I would say like just the exposure thing too, especially now like with social media and like you said, there's just pools of kids that want to play. They're everywhere. Like and a coach is not going to find you. I would say the exposure side of it is one thing that kids really don't think about until it's too late making sure you're getting that exposure. And, unfortunately, some kids will say, like, I want to play here and here, but I don't do club because, we can't afford it or we don't have a club near me or whatever it
Yeah.
is. And like unfortunately, sometimes that's the reality of your situation. And especially
Mhm.
like volleyball specifically, like club is where all of the recruiting is done. And if you're not paying for one of these huge clubs, and I mean, I know hockey is probably the same way, like it's so expensive.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, some of these kids that don't have the finances growing up to be able to support that dream,
Mhm.
it's not going to be, happening. So I think like the finances, the exposure, and then really, like we talked about before, like what's your end goal?
Mhm.
What's really the end? Because for me, like even if I had played, at a D1 school or a D2 school and, it wouldn't have gotten me to the end where I wanted to be anyway. And
Mhm.
some people with, a lot of times with those degrees too, like I know there was one girl who played D1. She was really good. She played for Creighton and they were like all crazy about her on the telecast because they're like she's a nursing major, like this is so amazing, she's a nursing major, she does this and she's a nursing major. And I'm like, do you know how many D3 athletes are nursing majors? But like the one girl that was a D1 that was a nursing major, they were like, oh my God, it's crazy she can do this, which it is
Yeah.
because D1 is so much more of a commitment. So, girls who want to, athletes who want to go into certain professions, like it just might not be feasible for you to do that and do D1 or
Mhm.
D2. So a lot of like, and that's a program that sold a lot of girls on the school I worked at too, was nursing because they could do
Mm.
a sport and nursing and they could graduate with their BSN. So I think just like really paying attention to that end goal of what you want
Mhm.
is so important. And kids get really caught up in the flashy side of being a college athlete before they really think about the end.
Yeah.
And, it's just so important to think about that. And it's so important to like make your choices in alignment with where you want to be at the end of the day.
Yeah. We had a kid when I was in college on the hockey team named Keith Muehlbauer, who was like a good, really solid average Division 1 college hockey player. Played every game, wasn't a star or anything like that, but played 4 years and had a great college career. And he had the wherewithal to sign up to be an engineering major, to think ahead and did engineering and did D1 men's hockey and all that sort of thing. And I remember one of the things that stood out to me was he would show up to class and he never ever once wore a single piece of team merchandise. He would show up in just regular people clothes and keep his head down. And I was like, I really love that. Also, you're 6'5" and jacked. So it's, people know who you are, but I
Yeah,
appreciate the
yeah.
effort to you to try to blend in. But
Yeah.
looking back now, like I see what the rest of the guys on that, and like a lot of them are either playing pro hockey in some random league in Europe, just trying to make some sort of money somehow because they don't have anything else they can do.
Right.
Or, one of them last I saw was trying to sell cryptocurrency in Miami. Like they're just, they're trying to throw it together versus
Yeah.
Keith got a job, got a wife, got, very normal life and can say like had a great college career and I moved on to greater and better things. But like
Yeah.
one kid had the wherewithal to do that while everyone else was
Yeah.
like hockey. Here we
Right.
go.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's really important to just like keep that in check. And that's like one of the great things about coaching D3, I think, was so many of the kids did realize that, whether they realized it up front or once
Mm,
they got there. One of my like favorite kids I ever coached, he ended up graduating with his 4-year degree in electrical engineering. He played 4 years. He was a starter. He was undersized for D3, so he would have never been a D1 player. He was very, very good though. All conference. He graduated with no debt, engineering degree. Two different engineering firms were like fighting over him at the end of his college career, offering him more money to go there because he did internships at both. And I'm like, you cannot tell me that this kid's a failure because he played D3. Like, this kid is like so much better off than most kids who play D1 of anything.
yeah,
And so I think just having that like end goal is just so important and like making sure that you're taking the right steps to get to that end goal because that's gonna, and like that kid you talked about now, like he has all the bragging rights in the world. Whereas like some of these guys, like, yeah, I played D1, but like that's it. Like,
yeah.
cool. Like,
Still
so did
bragging
some other
about it.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like,
Yeah,
So
peaked in
I
high
think it's
school,
so
peaked in
important.
college. That's the same sad story.
Right. So I think it's just really important to keep that that in check that like
Mm,
this will be over. Whether you were a great player at D1, a great player at D2, great player at D3, it will be over eventually. And you
mhm.
have the rest of your life that you need to be prepared for. And I think when kids get that before they even get to college, they end up being way better off at the end.
Yeah. I would love to end on the following question. If I gave you a magic wand and I said you can wave it and you can change any three things you want about the NCAA and how it operates at any level, what would be the three things that you would want to change? And it can be any three things.
Okay, I think right off the gun, I would change that no division can speak to kids earlier than their sophomore year of high school.
Okay.
I think that's just when you see like young kids already like committing
Mhm.
and all this to like, I think it should be a little bit more about their development and not so much. And I think that would take a lot of pressure off of some kids of thinking they're already failures because they're not getting the offers in ninth and eighth grade like other kids. So I would make it so no division can talk to a kid until a certain age. And I think it would be like 10th grade area.
Mhm.
Um, I would also make it so that every division has to have the resources to care about mental health of the athletes
Mhm.
and actually put like time and effort into that. Because we kind of touched on it. I think the mental health of athletes is really taken care of at certain schools, and that's across all levels. There's certain D3 schools that really care, certain D2 and certain D1s, and I think there's a lot that don't put the time and effort into it.
Mhm.
And I think that that's just really doing the student athletes a disservice, and it's just causing, I think, bigger problems down the road for these student athletes. And if you really care about the student athletes, which we
Mhm.
hope everyone does,
Fingers crossed.
then right, that's the goal. Um, then I think that should be a higher prioritization list.
Mhm.
And kind of with that too is like obviously injury prevention and making sure that everyone's fully staffed with trainers and medical service and every strength and conditioning and everything that goes into that. But I think mental health is one spot that I would really think that NCAA needs to kind of buckle down on the resources that are available to all student athletes.
Mhm.
If they're under the NCAA umbrella, I think it all needs to be a little bit more streamlined there. And then the last one, oh, that's tough. Um, I would think having been in like administrative and then obviously a coach with administration, I think more time on professional development for not only coaches, but administrative
Mm.
staff that is focused on student athletes and their well-being and their success. I
Mm.
think is a big one too, because I just see so many administrators who are there for a paycheck
Mm.
and they're not there for the student athletes necessarily. And that, that trickles down whenever you have administrators who would rather do anything else but meet the student athletes and get to know them and pour into their success and their experience.
Yeah.
I think that just trickles down then to coaches either acting the same way, which is never great, or feeling disgruntled and not happy with it, and then that then trickles down to the team. And a lot of times when the team puts the blame on the coaches, I'll be coaches advocate all day. They'll put the blame on the coaches as why don't we have this? Why don't we have that? Why don't we know who this person is? Or why don't we have this resource? When really it's like the administration isn't putting enough time and effort into the success and well-being of the student athletes. So I would
Mm.
say those three things: the age, the mental health, and then making sure that administrators in any NCAA capacity are more focused on student athletes and their success than metrics and numbers for the other side of campus as far as enrollment and money and all that. I think it's really important. And at the end of the day, like so many of the students, we've talked about it before, like they're not going pro. This isn't their end game. It's really about developing them mentally, physically, spiritually, their characteristics that are going to make them a great person for the world. And I think that's what like, you see the commercials for NCAA and like they're so like, oh, we're just, making the future leaders of the world. But
Yeah.
then like the leaders who are leading those future leaders of the world are like not great. So I think that would be really, really beneficial for student athletes across the board. And I think it's really overlooked because there's so many other things as far as like I said, the metrics and the money and fundraising and all that. I think it's just overlooked of the leadership and administration when it comes to that.
Yeah, it's so overlooked. And, I knew so many athletes at different points who were like, I would go and tell them, like, this coach is not like doing this and that, but I know they're not going to do anything about it. Or
Absolutely.
they don't care. Just having a competent administration that the kid feels confident, like if I go to them and say, hey, my coach is saying this to me or saying why to me, or coach is doing this or that, or, that sort of thing would make such a difference in getting these bad coaches and bad admin staff out because there are a lot of people that want to coach. There are no
Yeah.
shortage of people that want to be involved in sports, but it's sports management is a whole new major now. There are tens of thousands of kids that want to be involved in sports that could bring a positive impact. And there's so many people that, like you said, they got into it 10 years ago and they don't care, but it's a steady paycheck and they're here, they're going to check in, they're going to check out. And that's about it. And they just
Yeah.
don't care. Or, coaches who have just been here forever. Like that,
Mhm.
so many stories of this one coach who just, they've been the whole coach, the whole program, 20 years since we started this team. They've been coaching it.
Right.
And doesn't mean they're good. You talk to their old athletes and they're like, oh, they were the worst, worst years
Right.
ever. Like this person needs to go. And just that competence it would be so big.
Yeah.
Would be so
Yeah.
helpful.
Really.
Like,
I think it's just like that's one thing I'll shout out SUNY Brockport.
mhm,
I will say I just posted like TikTok about them the other day and I had a couple people comment they were student athletes there as well. And like obviously I know people too who are athletes.
yeah.
The administration in athletics for a D3 program, like the athletic director had, I don't even know, there's like every sport there possible that you can do in like the Northeast. I don't think there was like a lot of the water stuff, but there's wrestling, gymnastics, football. Like they had JV football because they had so many kids. Like there's everything. And the athletic director would still be like, hi, Katie, how's your day? Like
Mm,
still see me and know who I was. They cared about the program. They cared about our reviews of our coaches. And when we had a coaching change, they really cared about our input for the new coach. And like they had the kids come obviously for the interview, which every school usually does that. But I feel like they really did take it into consideration, like our views and our feelings. And, they're successful for a D3 athletics program in almost every sport for the most part. And I think a lot of it came from the administration, the athletics administration there. Like they really like set the bar so high for everybody that it was like kind of impossible to fail there. And they had like a lot of like they could really get the temperature of the team and like know if there were issues or not. And I think like that just went so far. And then after being there and then seeing other D3 schools, I'm like, oh my God. Like I didn't realize how good I had it. So I'll
ah,
give them a little shout out. I love them. And I think they did that really well. And I think it kind of spoiled me in the aspect of like I thought everywhere ran like that, and it's just
yeah.
not the case.
Oh man. Katie, thank you so much for doing this. This was awesome.
Yeah,
Let
thank you. This
people
was
know
great.
where they can find you. Any athletes listening, if they want to contact you, what's the best way to reach out?
Yeah, so my TikTok right now is where I'm most active. Um, and it's Get Recruited with Katie, and the name is Katie D3 Recruiting. If you have any questions or anything, I post daily on there as far as like transparency tips of good questions to ask coaches or admission staff on tours and stuff like that. And then I post just kind of red flags, green flags, and then just any other tips that can help an athlete kind of see through the recruiting process and make sure they're not being sold on lies. And so that's really where you can find me the most is Get Recruited with Katie. And then, yeah, that's about it. And the Empower Athletic Collective as well. If you're a volleyball player specifically, it's Empower Athletic Collective (EAC). And we do everything from mind work for athletes, making sure their mental game is good, health, nutrition, recruiting, obviously, strength and conditioning, that type of stuff. So I'm there too.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you so, so much.
Yeah, no, thank you. It was really great to meet you, and it was
Yeah.
nice being on.
All right. Have a good one, everybody.